Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Freddie Quack. I'm the chair of the BCS Digital Divide Specialist Group. Just want to do a quick introduction about the BCS. The BCS is a charter body for IT, and its mission is to make IT good for society. And I hope you can see why many of us are BCS members. And our SG's purpose is to leave no one digitally behind. So as part of our ongoing series of webinars to socialize this issue, we're delighted to hold this webinar today on bridging the digital divide, technology, harnessing people in care. And I'll leave it with Ruby, who's going to be our host today, to run this event and introduce our special guest today. Over to you, Ruby.
Thank you so much, Freddie, and a very good and warm welcome to everyone who joins this webinar today. We have got such an exciting webinar for you today. It's a subject matter that isn't spoken about much within the digital divide, but we want to make a difference today. I've got some great speakers with me. So we are going to be discussing the digital divide and harnessing the technology for children in care and care leavers, a very, very important subject. So within this fascinating webinar, we're going to explore those lived experiences, as well as unlocking the technology to open up the opportunities and positive outcomes for children in care and care leavers. So we've got an amazing panel here today. I'm going to quickly introduce you to them. And once I've done a quick little introduction, the idea is we'll have a bit of a panel discussion with my three speakers. And then what we'll do, we'll open it to Q&A right at the end. So, but please don't hold back on your questions. If you can actually start putting your questions into the chat, as soon as a comment comes into your head, as soon as you want to have more information, please do that. But without further ado, let me quickly introduce our panelists to you. So please, first up, I'm going to quickly introduce you to Rowan Adarin. Rowan is a lead business architect at Lloyds Banking Group, and also is a seasonal lecturer at the University of South Wales, and also is a published author. Also let you know that Rowan works tirelessly for her charities, and also can I tell everyone, Rowan, that you also met with Prince William very, very recently as well. So more about that, how to embarrass Rowan. Okay, they have over 2 decades of experience in shaping and delivering change in a highly regulated and complex organisation, and also the founder of a charity for fostered futures and leads the Equity, Inclusion and Diversity Working Group for the Newport Royal Foundation Homewards Initiative, which Prince William also talked to Rowan about that. Excellent. So next up we have, big wave to Rowan. Hello, Rowan, good to meet you. Next up we have Christian Brutt, who's the co-founder and managing director of Virtual Memory Box. We're going to be hearing a lot more about Virtual Memory Box from Christian. And also, he's now using his breadth of experience in commercialization, project management, and product design to provide some of the most vulnerable in our society with the ability to safely store and organize their precious memories as they go through the care system. Really looking forward to hearing from Christian. And lastly, really pleased to welcome Matthew Davies, the co-founder and COO of the Social Work Way. With a degree in social work from the Open University, Matthew brings over 17 years of dedicated services in the children's services, both as an experienced social worker and as a team manager. His career is driven by a deep-seated passion for the field of social work, combined with a keen interest on how technology can be leveraged to enhance the effectiveness and the reach of social work. Really looking forward to hearing from Matthew, and especially about the Social Work Way app that he's been working on. Okay, so without further ado, a quick intro to our speakers. Now, what we're going to do is individually hear from our speakers. They're going to raise the awareness of their particular interest and capability within this very important subject. So firstly, we'll hear 5 minutes from each of our speakers. So firstly up, Rowan, if that's okay with you, welcome.
Thank you, Ruby. And I've got to thank you again, because I know when you started having conversations in this space, it was very much a light bulb moment for you. And the fact that you've brought all of us together and are continuing to shine a spotlight and gets to think about this group of our community who often are overlooked is so, so important. So thank you ever so much. I just wanted to get a quick thumbs up. I can see Matthew. Can you see my slides, Matthew? Amazing. We can't let the good animation go to waste. So I think Ruby gave you a bit of a brief introduction to me there. To build on that and share a little bit more about who I am, I work in Lloyds Banking Group, so I'm a lead business architect in that space, and I've been working for Lloyds for over 2 decades in the areas of change. It's a job I absolutely love. The work I do with the University of South Wales and going in and lecturing is something that fills me with lots of, I suppose, enthusiasm for learning and expanding those areas that we can communicate and educate in. And I definitely think the care experience community is one of those spaces. I have got a raft of qualifications. I'm slightly addicted to learning. Ruby needs to be aware that I wanted to fund a psychology master's for me next, so that's coming, boss. I've got a master's degree in project management. I'm a Lean Six Sigma black belt, which is a continuous improvement methodology. I'm TOGAF accredited. I've got some accreditations from the BCS, and I've also studied inclusion and leadership at Cambridge University. So lots of examples of qualifications there. And in that space of hobbies and interests, so you can see there, Cast is my collection of poetry that was published last year. I've got a new book coming out this autumn, which is 10 Things I Wish My Foster Parents Knew, which is a guide to fostering hope in that sector, and lots of interesting examples of learning in that space. And then I've also got the smallest charity in the world, Fostered Futures, which has been established to look at improving those lifetime outcomes for care experienced people. And why am I telling you all of that? Not least because I need to practice bigging myself up. I'm very uncomfortable doing it. But the reality is that isn't where my journey started. So if I take you back to where it all started, this is me with a brilliant haircut. And yes, shamefully have to admit, I loved Take That. I still absolutely am a huge fan. At the age of 10 years old, this was actually my 10th birthday. And I think for all intents purposes, for most of the world, we were quite an average middle-class family, and there was nothing really untoward or concerning. But behind closed doors, sadly, that wasn't the case. And by the time I was 10 years old, I had already on multiple occasions come very close to ending my life, my life ending. I didn't end it. And almost was one of those articles in the newspaper that we tragically read about where a child has lost their life at the hands of their parents. There was a lot of abuse going on within the family. And social services stepped in and decided that for our protection, me and my little sister would have to be taken into care. And it's really important to talk about these difficult aspects of my journey, because that discomfort we all feel when we have these conversations is something that builds a bit of a barrier for support for children in these spaces. And just us engaging today in this discussion will help improve our ability to recognise and support those kids in care. And all of those outcomes I talked about earlier on, in terms of the qualifications I've got, the experiences that I've had, really tragically, that is not the case for most care experienced people. So most care experienced people face the most systemic disadvantages of any groups of our community or population. Whether we look at those experiences in the space of homelessness, so a quarter of care experienced people experiencing that by the time they're 18, making up a quarter of our homeless population at any point. Whether we look at their educational outcomes or employment, with almost half of them by the age of 19 not being in education, employment or training, their lives just stop for all intents purposes. When they leave care or are pushed out of that sector, often their futures start to take a very difficult and challenging path. Or whether we look at the pay gap, this is a fascinating one for me. So we see that there's lots of regulatory reporting requirements in the gender pay gap space. Many organisations choose to electively report on ethnicity pay gap reporting, but care experienced people, when they do make it into the employment space, struggle with one of the most significant pay gaps that there are within that space. From a poverty and a parenting perspective, almost double of the amount of care leaver parents live in poverty compared to non-care leaver parents. So struggling again with those lifetime outcomes and the support network and the financial availability to be able to pursue a successful career is very difficult for care experienced people. And this one always catches me in my throat. So 70% more likely to die prematurely. So there's data that shows that whilst for the majority of us, we are now living longer and longer, actually the numbers, even today, are still going in the opposite direction for care experienced people. So many care experienced people are actually living shorter lives. And that is a cumulative effect of the physical, mental health impacts, but also that disadvantage that we see across things like employment, health, education, and welfare. So why do we need to think about it today for those children in care? I do a lot of work with different children who are care leavers or who are actually still in care today. And from a digital divide perspective, there's a number of angles worth us considering. Whether it's lack of access to technology. So when I was in care back in the 90s, I know it was like when internet was just coming in and the phone lines, you couldn't ring anyone when someone was on the internet. I'm sure many of you remember those days. There was one computer in the house, but it was the biological child of my foster parents. And for a time, he chose to let me use that. But then my foster parents decided that I wouldn't be allowed to anymore, and the access to that got taken away. I know of care experienced children today who are in the situation where they don't have access to a laptop or those means, and they're having to travel into the city to use the computer in the library. They're restricted to 2 hours use of that computer. And in that time, they're having to navigate a number of challenges, not just in terms of access and employment or education, but also challenges like needing to understand their housing position and go through a process of working through that. So access to technology still remains a barrier for a number of children in care. The digital literacy skills, again, in terms of that education and opportunity for education, I truly believe that care experienced people have an awesome set of skills, whether it's resilience or problem solving or empathy. I've spent my time over the years in a few different technology related roles. And one of them I remember really well when I did a bit of a stint as a tester. And it became the running joke on the department that if I couldn't break the solution, nobody could. Because whenever they threw a new piece of tech at me, I would do all the stuff that wasn't on the test plan and manage to break it. And the developers would get really annoyed with me and come be like, why did you click on that blank space in the corner? And I'm like, why not? You wanted me to try and break it. I've broken it, now fix it. But I think, again, care experienced people, the challenges often that they've had to work through in life really lend themselves to problem solving and thinking outside of the box and coming at things from a different perspective and way. Affordability of the internet is another interesting one. So there's been a broader movement within the care experience space to recognise it as a protected characteristic. And one council in particular actually implemented free Wi-Fi for care leavers up until the age of 25. So again, I think some of those barriers in terms of how they can actually access the support mechanisms, many of which are now digital and online, can be a particular challenge. There is a massive conversation we could have around safety online and the online environment. Care experience people are particularly vulnerable to many of the challenges that we see for younger people in these spaces. But they also have the added challenge of safeguarding often. So when I was in care, my mother wasn't allowed to know where I lived. So any letters that she sent to me, somebody else would write the address on the front of the envelope. Back then, there was no social media. I can only imagine today the lengths that I would have to go to try and protect where I was living if I wanted to have quite a normal upbringing and experience in terms of my friends and what they were doing in those spaces, but had to consider some of those safeguarding aspects. And then also the social stigma. So there is a massive amount of social stigma surrounding care experienced people, and that from a digital perspective blocks a number of opportunities that they may be available to them otherwise. So that was a bit of my background and my experience. I'm going to hand over now back to Ruby, and she can introduce some amazing people who are looking at different angles of how we can use technology to help support care experienced people and care leavers.
Excellent, amazing, Rowan. Those figures are very startling. They really do hit you in the face. 1 in 4 people are most likely to end up homeless under the age of 18 compared to the general demographic of under 18-year-olds. Amazing stats. Thank you so much, Ro, for sharing your lived experiences as well with us. Very eye-opening for lots of us here, and also touching on the digital divide and all the impacts it's had on your life as well. Thank you. So can we move on to Christian next, if that's okay? Christian, are you happy to go next? Just explain your area, please.
Yeah, of course, be delighted to. It's be a hard act to follow after Owen, but I'll have a go. I'll just share my screen now. Okay, can you see that okay?
Yep, we see it.
Okay, brilliant. Okay. So yeah, so my name's Christian. I'm managing director and co-founder of Virtual Memory Box. That's the slide before. Ultimately, what we do as a company is we help children in care safely store and organize their memories whilst they're going through the care system. So just to kind of give you a bit of a background on the issue, so there was a big piece of research that was done that found care experienced adults were returning back to care, and they had large gaps in their knowledge from their time during those years while they were spent in care. When you think about it, a lot of them are often in transition, moving across multiple placements. Some of them are lucky enough to have kind of physical memory boxes given to them by carers. But ultimately, along the way, a lot of them are kind of lost, damaged, or stolen. And then when they come to being care experienced adults and they're kind of trying to dig back through to try and find some of those memories while they were growing up in care, often they've lost contact with key people along the way. Social workers will have left, foster carers will have changed address or numbers and moved on. So it's a real difficult space for them to be able to understand kind of their own life story as they've been through the care system. When you think about normal children who have been brought up in a kind of atypical environment with parents, they've got someone who's next to them at all times capturing these memories, and that's very difficult when you've got kind of a fragmented group of adults who are around you doing that. So from a background point of view, so we were funded by the Department for Education, and we co-designed Virtual Memory Box alongside a local authority up in the northeast called South Tyneside Council. So we worked alongside their children, their young people, their carers, social workers, team managers, and really kind of looked at the real problems that needed solving here. And really just tried to get a good understanding of the most simple way to solve this problem for them. And when you think of those memories that we are saving for them, they're a mix of photos, videos, voice recordings, and documents. What this allows them to do is it allows, you know, foster carers or children when they're on the go to kind of pull up Virtual Memory Box, which is a web portal. So it's not an app. Kind of from some of the research that we did when we were starting out, we've got a vast range of users from, you know, 3-year-olds all the way up to self-confessed technophobes in their kind of 80s who were foster carers. So making sure something that is accessible to all of them is really important. So having a web portal where they can look kind of photos of family, friends, and places that they visited. It also allows them through using videos to kind of go past that 2D and start to see, you know, themselves in different moments. You know, that could be as early as first steps, you know, learning how to ride a bike, you know, birthday parties. And the voice recordings as well is a really, really like lovely touch for them, because it allows them to kind of not just read the comments and the notes that are attached to this. It lets them hear voices and lets them hear the passion that these people had for them, and hopefully lets them understand that they were cared for and loved. you know, and we allow that through family as well. So, you know, it's not just a case that some people don't speak to their family at all. Some people have regular contact with their family. So this allows them on both sides to bridge that gap where they're going through care. And then lastly, with the documents, you know, it allows you from all sorts of different angles, this, you know, from certifications through to uploading, you know, paintings or drawings onto the system, as well as, you know, things like certifications for education and any other important documents that they've got. So I'm just going to take you through a couple of the screens. I'm not going to do a live demo for you, but ultimately when they come, they just have a login with a two-factor authentication where they input their details and then an email comes and they can input it themselves. So this is the first view. I'm just going to show you 4 views. It's as simple as it could possibly be. The first view is a view of the memory boxes. So in this instance, there's just one child box that I have access to. So if this is me as a child, I can just see my own memory box. If this is me as a professional, I might see multiple people in here. But also with children as well, we allow them, if they've got siblings in care, to see their siblings, to help them bridge the gap while they're going through the care system. So once they click into the memory box, they come through to the timeline. So this is a chronological order for them. And you can see here the albums are in chronological order. It allows them to search keywords throughout each one of those titles and comments that sit beneath them. We can look in terms of a date order. We can look for specific date ranges if we're going to look for them. Or we could just browse them from oldest to newest. This is really great because from a social worker perspective, you know, if we're honest, social workers change often, and this allows them to get up to date quite quickly with a child. They can look at their earliest memories and start coming through and really build a better picture of who this child and young person is. What we also have is the ability of tagging. So from the tagging, we can look at tagging birthday parties. You know, we can look at all these different things. Also, we can, when we're preparing children and young people to get ready for the big wide world out there, you know, unfortunately, a lot of these children don't have access to parents who are going to be there at 18 when arguably you may be still a child. I know that I was at 18. You know, they've got to go and fend for themselves. So what you can do is you can also create albums and files around things like finance and tag pictures with finance to help them understand the things that they're doing, whether that's managing money, cooking, and other things, getting them ready for kind of adulthood. So if we to click into one of these albums now, we can click in and it gives us, you know, an ability to, you know, give it a title, and we can start adding some richer context around this. Now, I've not put a lot of context in this because I want it just to fit on one screen. But really, when you're in the moment and you're capturing these albums and these pictures, as a person who's doing that, and you think it's quite fragmented because you've got all of these people, you've got foster carers, you've got social workers, you may even have IROs, you may have youth workers. All of these have the ability to contribute to that child's memory box. So by adding that context, it means that in that moment when they're there, they can capture that information and give them as much context and rich detail as possible around that memory. You know, when we're older and we're kind of looking back at memories, you know, we have someone who's sat next to us to jog our memories. Unfortunately, as a care experienced adult, you don't have that. What we also have is the ability to tag the location so they can see exactly where that happened, and maybe when they're older, even revisit those areas that they have them fond memories in. And then we also have the ability to comment back and forth with the people who have permission to do that within the platform. So here you can see this is just a normal kind of viewer. You can click left and right, you can click a slideshow, but I think instead of going into all the details, more importantly, there's a report functionality here. So no one can delete anything on a virtual memory box. This gives people who are uploading confidence that they're not going to break it, because as we spoke about, we've got self-confessed technophobes. What it also means is when children, young people are going through turbulent times and they want to delete something, they can just send feedback, and then on the back end, the admin can kind of hide that. So just to give you kind of the 4 permission types, basically using Virtual Memory Box, it gives them a whole raft of ability, and we're child-led, so the child can choose whether they want the adult in their life to view only, view and comment, and view and add. From a data perspective, the data is honed 100% by the local authorities. You know, we have all the right certifications on our side, and we make sure that we're doing constant pen tests to ensure its robustness and safety. So an outlook from us. So I've been working on this for 2 years, but really only been working on this for the past 12 months all in. And we've got a great outlook by the end of the year. With a win behind our sails, we're looking at having 25 local authorities working with Virtual Memory Box, and that's across the UK, and 15,000 children and young people. So, you know, our big, hairy, ambitious goal as a company that's slapped on the wall that kind of our 6 employees look at every time we walk in is that, you know, by 2030, we want every child in the UK to have their own virtual memory box. So thanks so much for listening to me, and I'll pass back in to Ruby.
Wow, thank you so much, Christian. That was really amazing to hear of this. It's all new to me, and it's going to be new to many, many people that are joining us today. I've got a couple of questions which we will take just towards the end as well, whilst you were giving your presentation there. I picked up one line from you, Christian, which is very emotive. With the virtual memory box, you said to know that children are cared and loved with the virtual memory box. That was just a lovely line, so emotive. So
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. We'll come on to a discussion a bit later. Just before we go on to Matt, I just want to remind everyone, and thank you for people who are posting comments and questions. Don't feel shy. Any comment is going to be a very enriching comment to us. Any question we will take later as well, but please do keep the chat alive. Keep telling us that you're out there and you're listening to us as well. We would love that. So thank you so much, Christian. Super. So next, by no means least, we're going to introduce you to Matt Davies, who's the founder and CEO of the Social Work Way. Over to you, Matt.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. First of all, a big thank you to everyone for raising such an important topic and bringing attention to it. Yeah, so my introduction is, my name is Matthew Davies. Like I said, it's been 17 years now working as a childcare social worker within a local authority in South Wales. And I guess prior to doing that, I always had a keen interest in technology and IT, and I guess a desire to help people, a desire to try and make a difference. So I started working in youth clubs, got on great with the young people, but felt that I could only kind of interact with them to a certain level, and whereby I wanted to make perhaps more of a difference, I then decided to go into the social work. So 17 years in social work, started as a support worker and worked my way up to be a team manager, which I'm currently working as it stands. All frontline children's services. So I've got experience working with children looked after, children with disabilities, learning needs, experiences of children with significant ACEs, and also lots of experiences working with colleagues, with social workers. Some of which haven't lasted in the profession for very long, some of which who qualified the same time as me and are still working as a team manager or head of service as we speak. So approximately 2.5 years ago, I decided to have an idea whereby I wanted to develop a mobile app for social workers. It led from being an app for social workers, not just for social workers, but also for families and young people that we work with. That was a fundamental importance for me, that the app was accessible for the families that we work with, the children that we work with, and allowing them to have a voice. So we developed the Social Work Way mobile app. The Social Work Way mobile app is a mobile app that brings together everything that is out there now, but brings it together all under one platform. So we looked at the flexibility of the app. We looked at the ease of the use, the importance of accessibility and how people can access the app. We looked at what was needed for social workers. We looked at what was needed for the young people in order to ensure that their voice was heard. So we considered looking at it from a social worker's perspective, and we looked at the complexities around the job of a social worker. We looked at what was preventing us spending more time with families. I think there's a current stat in children's services and research done recently that states that social workers spend 80% of their time in front of their computers and only 20% of their time with families. So what we looked at is what the app could provide social workers to allow them to spend more time with families. So for example, the app has a referral form feature in there, a pretty basic feature to use. But what it means is that rather than making a referral coming back to the office, the social worker can actually sit down in the presence of the family of that child and complete the form in partnership with them. They can then submit that form using the app. By the time they get back to the office, that little bit of admin is done. It also allows for better outcomes for children and the families because they have equal participation, and that's a key word, equal participation within completing that referral form, which is so important. Within Wales, we also look at personal outcomes. So we look at what children want to achieve through their care and support plans or child protection plans. We need to measure those personal outcomes, but quite often we turn up with a house with a pad and a pen. And again, this is not about replacing the current ways of working. It's just giving additional options, I guess. So the app will allow us to interact with children via an iPad or via the mobile phone. So they can play a little game in terms of measuring their personal outcomes. So they can move a slider back and forth and a rocket will launch so they can measure where they are in terms of achieving their personal outcomes. So again, it's going back to that word voice and control. It's giving them the option then to kind of have their say within their plan, which is so important. The app also allows for well-being support. Throughout my time in children's services, like I said, social workers very much come and go. And I think Christian picked up on that in his presentation. For young people, the stability of a social worker is so important. And we are not achieving that at this time. So well-being is a huge issue for social workers. So within the app, we've ensured that well-being tools are available at the touch of a button. We've also looked at working with a well-being app. So everyone who downloads, every social worker that downloads the Social Work Way app will also have access to a well-being app to support their journey through the profession. We've also got self-help tools, self-support tools, and advice on how to kind of access whatever type of support they need. We've also looked at it from a student's perspective. So within the tool, there's a insightful insight section whereby weekly articles, weekly theories are updated. So again, it's just accessing the right information with confidence that that information is up to date at the right time. We've also considered, I lost my train of thought then. We've also considered how best to reduce costs for local authorities. And we've looked at what the pinch points are for local authorities, one of which being the employment of agency workers. And again, that's very much needed at the moment due to the kind of the lack of social workers coming through. So what we've looked at doing is giving local authorities the opportunity to advertise positions within the app free of charge, no cost to them, with hopefully bringing that cost of signing up to agencies and so forth. The app also allows social workers to look at what they can offer as well in terms of additional work, whether or not they want to increase some assessments and be able to kind of add and offer extra work. And then we look at the CLAR children. So what can we do then to look at supporting CLAR children once again in accessing the tools that they need to have their say? So we're looking at implementing CLAR feedback booklets. So each CLAR child will have a personal login to the app that they can access their relevant information and CLAR feedback booklets, or tools that if they want to have their say and want to provide any feedback, then they could submit that information, and that information will then go directly back to their allocated social worker. If there is a change in social worker, it will then go back to that team manager or senior within that team. So there's a bit of a fail-safe there as well. So to bring it all together, I guess the app is there to integrate services. It's to integrate different ways of using the app and getting information out of the families that we work with in order to achieve the best outcomes. Thanks.
Super, amazing, Matt. There's so much there, so much integration that goes on in looking at that app. Incredible. And I think it's incredible also that it's not just the process, you're also bringing in the idea of well-being and all the other surrounds that are needed to make that 360-degree view of the single app, make it all come alive. And we've got some questions that came up, which we'll come to a little later. So thank you, Matt, and thank you to all the speakers. Very, very enlightening, I found, as we've mentioned very early, that not many of us know about this space unless you're actually working in it, and there's so much there that we are learning, and where we need to be able to help each other to get the very best out of what we can do to lessen that digital divide. And here we saw some examples of how technology is doing that. So if it's okay with Ro, Christian and Matt, I'm just going to ask a couple of questions. We'll have a bit of discussion. And I know there are some, if you've been watching the chat, there are some great questions coming through. So I really appreciate everyone who's really engaged with this and really made us feel so welcome.